Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Vikings Spin. I'm your host Jason, and we are going to have this episode be about the Vikings 2017 draft picks. We're going to break them down individually and take a look at what each player is going to bring to the Minnesota Vikings and how the Vikings might try to use them, what their prospects are on making the team, starting, where they'll be on the depth chart, and so forth. So let's start with how the draft started. Obviously, the Vikings, you could look at their first round pick was basically Sam Bradford, since they traded the first round pick last year to acquire Sam Bradford, and most people would say that Sam Bradford was better than anyone they could have gotten out of this draft. Certainly at the quarterback position, he's one of the better quarterbacks in the league. Don't think they could have done better at the position there. So, much like the Patriots are touting Brandon Cooks as their first round pick, I'll tout Sam Bradford as ours. Moving on to the second round, we've got Dalvin Cook was the second round draft pick, and in that, the Vikings got a player that fell out of the first round. He was pretty much consensus first round pick, but he fell a little bit. We were able to trade up and go get him into the second round. Dalvin Cook, I was just taking a look at Pro Football Focus, and they had some interesting statistics on him. He was a top player in college when it came to breaking tackles. And some of the stuff that jumped out at me was, it said that he was number one among Power 5 schools in yards after contact in 2016, and he was second in the nation, so he can break a lot of tackles. And then he also, what he brings to the Vikings is the ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. So you'll probably see more two halfback sets where you have Latavius Murray and Dalvin Cook in the backfield at the same time. You can motion one of them out to the slot, and you can cause mismatches for opposing linebackers that way. So he definitely brings some really explosive elements to the Vikings. Very excited for that pick. The next pick that we made was in the third round. We traded up a few spots to get Pat Elflein. And Elflein, one of the top interior linemen, definitely the top center in the draft. And that's where he's going to play for the Vikings, according to head coach Mike Zimmer. Which means that Joe Berger will move over to right guard. So we'll have Berger at right guard. Kind of drafting Elflein kind of kills two birds with one stone there. You get a starting center and Berger moving over to right guard to fill that spot, so they're going to fill it one way or the other. That solidifies the starting offensive line with what the Vikings did in free agency. So Elflein will definitely be able to open up some holes for Murray and Cook and protect Sam Bradford better this season. The next pick that the Vikings had, they went with Jaleel Johnson on the defensive line. Johnson, of course, with Sharif Floyd's career in jeopardy, they had to address the defensive tackle spot, and they did so with Johnson. Johnson uses his hands. Of the defensive tackles in the draft, he's one of the best at using his hands in order to get pressure on the quarterback, get penetration into the backfield, and they were able to snag him in the fourth. A solid pickup there, addressing a need. And I expect Johnson to get into the rotation right away. He could start at the 3 technique, or at the very least he'll be into the rotation there. The second pick in the fourth round that the Vikings had was linebacker Ben Gideon. Gideon is expected to play on special teams. He's a good tackler. He's played mostly the middle He does have some experience on the outside, but he's mainly a middle linebacker that is more of a two-down run defender. Not really someone you're going to put in coverage, but definitely somebody that can play against the run. Maybe you'll see him in some goal line defensive sets at linebacker, or primarily, probably he will play immediately on special teams. Another guy that will probably see action on special teams is the Vikings' first fifth-round pick, Rodney Adams, a wide receiver slash kick returner they were able to nab out of South Florida. Rodney Adams played a lot of his snaps in the slot, so he was used very similarly to the way the Vikings used Cordero Patterson in the slot last year. So he saw a lot of wide receiver bubble screens and things like that. A very similar type player to Cordero Patterson. He specializes in the kick return game. He's a speedy wide receiver that is good on catch and go. Probably has to work on his route running if he wants to crack the wide receiver lineup on offense, but he'll play immediately on special teams, probably as the starting kick returner from what I've seen. Then in the fifth round, with the second fifth round pick the Vikings had, they got Danny Isidora, a guard out of Miami. I like Isidora because he was able to start at a big school like Miami for several years. He's a solid player, good run blocker and pass blocker, and I think that he has a chance, I'm going to say probably in his second year, to challenge for a starting role, but he's at least solid depth this year. I think some scouts had a third or fourth round grade on him, so he's a pretty good player. I think that we got a great value there in the fifth round with Isidora, and the Vikings wanted to make sure that they had more depth on the offensive line this year than they did last year. So that's a good pick there, I believe. The next pick is a sixth round pick, a guy that fell quite a bit. Most people had anywhere between a third or fourth round grade on him, was Bucky Hodges, a tight end, who is basically a wide receiver and a big wide receiver. And I think he fell because he doesn't have a lot of experience in line blocking. That's something the Vikings will have to work on with him. But he is an amazing player as a receiver, a move tight end, a big wide receiver, whatever you want to call him. He's going to create mismatches. 6'7", 245-pound toy here for Sam Bradford. Just throw it up high, he can go get it. He's an immediate red zone threat. He can bust the seam. He ran a 4.57 40-yard dash at the combine, so he's an athletic freak as far as a receiver goes. So if he can improve his blocking, maybe polish up his route running a little bit, he's got a chance to be a really good player for the Vikings. And then the seventh round netted 4 draft picks here for the Vikings. They got wide receiver Stacy Coley with the first of the seventh round picks. Coley is a speed receiver. He has some experience on special teams, but mostly as a slot and outside receiver who's able to stretch the field. So he'll have a shot. He'll probably challenge Jarius Wright. If not, he'll wind up on the practice squad. Kind of hard to knock off a veteran receiver when you're a seventh round rookie. But Coley does have some pretty good traits for a wide receiver, so we'll see how he does. The second pick in the seventh round was Ifeadi Odenigbo, a defensive end. He is as a pass rusher, edge player, and I feel pretty good about the Vikings taking defensive linemen late because of what our coaching staff is able to do with defensive linemen. We were able to get spot starts out of Shamar Stephan, a former seventh round pick. Third round pick Donnell Hunter has turned into a star. Everson Griffin was a former fourth rounder. So was Brian Robinson, and Mike Zimmer has turned those guys into beasts. So I think Odenigbo has the tools to succeed. We don't need him to play right away because we're very deep at defensive end right now. But he's a guy that watch for his development over the next couple of years. Probably headed for the practice squad this year, though. The second to last pick was Elijah Lee, that outside linebacker. He fell pretty much due to size concerns, but in the 4-3 defense that we have, we want that will linebacker to be able to cover, and that is what Lee specializes in. He is a cover linebacker, maybe not the biggest or most physical guy, but he's a guy that can take on the athletic tight ends and backs that you see in today's NFL offenses. So for a 7th round pick, former Vikings linebacker Ben Lieber said that this kid could probably surprise you at start. And that would be great to get that out of the 7th round pick like Elijah Lee, who, some people thought he might go in the 4th or 5th round. So I was happy for the Vikings to be able to get Lee. And then last but not least is Jack Tocho, a cornerback, who I believe the Vikings are looking to move to safety and try him there to improve the safety depth. Tocho does need some development, though. He's probably going to be looking at a year or two on the practice squad. I think the Vikings want to transition him to safety because he might not have the desired speed to play on the outside cornerback spot where he played in college. So, but all in all, I think this was a really good draft for the Vikings. They got some immediate contributors with their first 3 picks in Cook, Elflein, and Johnson. Elflein, I think, is a day 1 starter. Cook is going to be your 1A or 1B running back with the two-headed monster you're going to have there with Latavius Murray. And Jaleel Johnson is definitely going to see snaps in the defensive tackle rotation right away. Then you've got some other contributors that are going to be on special teams. I think Gideon and Rodney Adams are going to contribute big time on special teams right out of the gate. And then you're going to have Bucky Hodges will be in the mix at tight end with Kyle Rudolph and David Morgan. And I would think that Elijah Lee is going to have a chance to challenge Emmanuel Lemur for that weak side linebacker spot. And then the rest of the draft, I think you've got some solid depth and developmental picks. So all in all, a good draft here for the Minnesota Vikings. Very excited to see what they're going to be able to do with these new players and how they'll fit in. Definitely looking forward to the rest of the offseason too. Rick Spielman alluded to the fact that the Vikings are probably going to add a veteran or two. And who will that be? Will that be somebody like a wide receiver, be it Michael Floyd, who I've heard rumors about? Paul Allen's mentioned him. Rod Streeter. There's another one that we heard that the Vikings had interest in earlier this offseason, so I expect that maybe one of these deals will get done now that the draft is over. On the defensive side of the ball, I could see Leon Hall at cornerback because he's got position flexibility. He can play outside, nickel, safety, and he knows Mike Zimmer's defense. He would make sense. Perhaps some additional depth at offensive tackle. You've got guys like Ryan Clady and Austin Pastor out there that the Vikings could take a look at. Some interesting June 1st cuts could be coming. Michael Kendricks, linebacker for the Eagles. Some other interesting things that have happened. The Bills declined Sammy Watkins' 5th-year option, so you wonder if he's available as trade bait. I think that would be a really dynamic addition there if the Vikings were interested in exploring that route. And those are the ones I've heard about. I know the Packers released Christine Michael at running back, but we really don't need any assistance there, I don't think. As far as the Vikings, they have decided to pick up Anthony Barr's 5th-year option. So we will be seeing Barr in purple once again during the not only this year but in 2018 as well. Seeing as how the Vikings didn't draft a linebacker before the 4th round, you pretty much knew that was coming. And I think Anthony Barr is going to have a bounce back year this season. I mean, he started his career really well in 2014 as a rookie. Played very well again in 2015. Had a little bit of a down year last year, but I think Anthony Barr knows now that he's going to be looking. He's going to want to get himself a long-term contract, I think, and I think he knows what he needs to work on here. He's going into now his fourth season in the league in this same Mike Zimmer defense, and I think he's going to take a big step forward. And I'm glad the Vikings took the chance and exercised his fifth-year option. I think it's going to pay off big time because Anthony's got big time ability as a defensive player, and I think he's going to do good things for us this year. And that's about all I have for my thoughts on the draft and free agency and the other internal moves the Vikings are making. The only other things I can mention here is it's going to be interesting to see some of the new coaches. I'm excited to see, obviously, Pat Shurmur have a whole off season with the Vikings, being able to implement his offense and not just modify what Norv Turner had. It's going to be good for Sam Bradford to be able to be in there full time now with a complete off season. They were able to strike up some chemistry last year with him. Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Vikings Spin. I'm your host Jason, and we are going to have this episode be about the Vikings 2017 draft picks. We're going to break them down indivially and take a look at what each player is going to bring to the Minnesota Vikings and how the Vikings see you next time here on Vikings might try to use them, what their prospects are on making the team, starting.